do have a webinar on our website that explains why we have to charge in the first place, all the scams to watch out for if you're just starting to explore how to get out of a timeshare, and really covers the entire process.
This is a story about a dude named Lane. Then one day he went to try to rent them out, and then he became one of the best of man.
Hey, Simple Passive Cashflow listeners. Today we are going to talk about giving up your timeshare, why they're not the best of investments, and what the process is to unload them. And I personally am always looking to take advantage of a distressed seller, whether it's an apartment building or I'm interested in these timeshares to buy, but not from the first buyer, but the second owner. I'll get into this. And this kind of goes into the whole hobby. Lately I've been buying cars. Lately I've been realizing it's not the greatest to buy a car new, obviously because of that you take that big gut punch as you drive it off the lot. But if you pick up a 1 to 2 year old car, you ride that decay curve down, and then you sell it at some point before the warranties expire or shortly thereafter, you can capture a low cost of ownership. And it's very counterintuitive, of course, but as we've seen through the first 200-300 podcasts of Simple Passive Cashflow land, things normally are. But yeah, I want to introduce Alexandra Olson, who is from if you guys want to check this out on your computer, to giveupmytimeshare.com. But welcome, Alexandria.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so I'm from Give Up My Timeshare. We help people to get out of their timeshares, and we also, of course, always sourcing a buyer for that seller that is distressed, that wants to get out, whose kids don't want their ownership. Yes, we are uniting sellers and buyers. Some of them we're taking over ourselves, and that's our business.
Friends don't let friends buy timeshare. It's a
so
pretty
true.
kind of a crummy investment. It's scammy how they do things, right? You see them here in Hawaii, and every time I go on vacation, you got like people handing out flyers and like trying to trick people into talking to them, especially at Las Vegas, buying these timeshares. Let's go through the process. Some young couple, they get bamboozled into buying this thing. How does somebody really end their timeshare? What's the process look like?
First of all, if there is no mortgage on the property, so it's free and clear, the maintenance fees are current, then it comes down to a matter of finding a new owner. There have been a lot of scams that have emerged about trying to help people say, oh, we were frauded in the purchase, or all these different things. But what it really comes down to is this is deeded ownership, this is real estate, so you do need to find a new buyer. Just as you can't walk in the street and declare, I don't want this home anymore. The property tax bill and HOA fees and things are still going to find you whether or not you've declared that to the world. It's the same with a timeshare. It is a deed, and you need to find a new buyer. And that's really the trouble, is that the resale market has diminished incredibly in the last 5 to 10 years, just because of the different travel options that have emerged.
And just so that we can pinpoint it, because every time people ask me, I'm a real estate investor, I have a timeshare. I'm like, dude, you're not an investor. You just got suckered into a deal. But I can't explain to myself. I just walk up upset and frustrated. My understanding, it's because when people buy a timeshare, not only is it expensive, and when you figure out the cost of ownership, you do like a life cycle cost analysis, it's not a good deal. But also you get into these nasty arrangements where you have annual maintenance fee, and then like you have a termination fee. So it's like negative equity. If you can explain that a little bit.
Sure. It's ultimately, a timeshare was once sold as an investment, and there was a resale market. Now, because of Airbnb, VRBO, the internet, consumer confidence in being able to plan a trip short notice and having a condo with accommodation similar to the timeshares where you have a kitchen and space, there's just no, resale market for it. That's gone away. So what you have is, it's basically a prepayment of vacations, and it can be really quality vacations. I actually believe there can be some value in the ownerships if you use them. Now, getting back your original upfront investment, that's as you're speaking to, with auto purchases, certainly buying resale would be much more advantageous. You don't have that 30 grand or whatever to recoup from the upfront. It can be a good value. I always tell people at our seminars or whatever, don't feel bad. 10 million homes in America own timeshares, and you bought this because you wanted to spend time with the people that you love in a beautiful place. And if it gave you those good memories, you probably wouldn't trade those for the money. That being said, it's really not a good investment, because at this point, and you can jump online, make reservations for anywhere in the world for this weekend, and pay less than what the maintenance fee is in most cases.
And not to bash on timeshares that much, but I got a buddy, see, he bought them because it forces him to go on a vacation. If not, they never go on it. And for kind of higher net worth families that are very type A personality workaholics, you need stuff like that.
Absolutely. If it
Course.
ends up being the catalyst to create memories with the people you love, that's awesome. And that is a great reason to look at owning one. Really, for probably most of your viewers, the maintenance fee annually is nominal. But if it does force that commitment to doing the trip and knowing, okay, we have a week we're going to do every year as a family, then it comes down to just picking something that's going to offer the most flexibility. And sometimes value isn't the most important thing.
But the economics have shifted, like you said, right? Because people can just go on Airbnb, VRBO, etc., just book it. And it's not like hotels, they don't have availability. I mean, sure, you have to pay $600 a night here in Hawaii, but there's no lack of site.
Right. And at the same time, like doing so many vacation rentals with timeshares, I definitely see that if you are willing to understand the system, there's no learning curve on the internet, that kind of thing. Actually, most timeshare owners are older rather than young couples. It's typically retired couples that now want to go and travel. They want to provide trips to their families. It's not to say that young families don't buy it, but more commonly, the consumer is kind of a baby boomer type.
Just less educated on what's a good purchase, and they just don't have lack of information. They just don't
And
play
how to
around.
work the system. So many ownerships that we take over, we're able to get good value out of. Book weeks in Hawaii for the equivalent of about $1,000 of cost. You've got to know where to click online and have the patience to do that.
Like, what's the process if somebody wants to sell their timeshare? And then we'll skip over to, I think most of us don't really we want to buy timeshares from these distressed buyers or sellers. We'll get into that at the end. But what's the process if somebody wants to unload it?
So if they want out of it, what they would do is I recommend that everyone first contact your resort. See if they'll let you out for free. That does happen on occasion, usually with a higher end brand. So explore that option first. Plus, you want to know that you didn't go and pay someone to get out of it when you could have gotten out of it for free through the developer. That would be step one. If that's not the case, then you need to go through a company that can secure a buyer for you. And I would encourage everyone to, be very careful and not pay anyone up front. And I'm sure that your viewers are, certainly a little more savvy than many of the people that have fallen victim to the scams. But in general, don't pay anyone up front. If a client comes to us, all we're going to need is the deed, a copy of the deed if they have it, copy of their IDs, copy of a recent maintenance fee bill. We can then price it out. We use a calculator, so we already have pricing preset for every resort in the world and get them a quote within minutes. And if they want to move forward, we send them an e-sign contract, open escrow, and it follows a normal real estate process. So we're never paid until close of escrow, and we don't even collect payment. It all goes through the title company. So it's a very secure transaction and a guaranteed one. If we are not able to secure a buyer on our own, then we're going to transfer it into our own name and turn it into vacation rental. It's a guaranteed quick process, and what our clients are looking at is, hey, we don't use this thing, we're paying for it every year anyway, and it's going up at 6 to 10% a year. We're just throwing money away. Let's basically stop the bleeding.
So what's the normal commission structure? Like with real estate, deals, it's 6% is usually the commission, and then what's the normal range to keep in mind?
Are you asking what do we charge to
Yeah.
take 3 to 5 years of maintenance fees as a good rule of thumb? The exception, there are some outliers to that, which would be resorts that have very high transfer fees or require prepayment of 2 or 3 years of maintenance fees, something like that. I do have a webinar on our website that explains why we have to charge in the first place, all the scams to watch out for if you're just starting to explore how to get out of a timeshare, and really covers the entire process.
What's one of the better ones, the less nasty ones to get out of, and what are like the worst?
Okay. Probably the simplest would be a straightforward deeded week. What's happened over the last 10 years in the industry is a lot of resorts have moved to a trust base, like it's a real estate trust, where they now upgrade all the inventory into that trust, and it's points that the client is using collateralized by this real estate trust. Those are a little more difficult because it's basically a membership and you have to have the resort approval before you can transfer title.
Oh,
So,
and that's like
I am always
Disney's like that, I think.
yeah, Disney, your Diamonds, your Wyndhams, the big players. And I prefer to deal with straightforward deeded old legacy properties where someone owns week 42 and unit 10. That's always the quickest and easiest transaction. That being said, we're familiar with and pride ourselves on being the best in the world at getting through the process with whatever property it is. That's how we've built our whole business model is around not getting paid until we've completed the transaction. And it has, of course, encouraged us to be the best at getting it done.
I'm not too familiar with timeshares. Normally they cost what, about 50 grand in cash in the beginning? You can't finance it,
I
right?
think the average is about 20,000, and you can finance, usually at about 18%.
And then they're putting in 20 grand. The maintenance fees are about how much per?
A year is very typical.
Okay, so for me to dump my 20 grand timeshare that I might have access to, what, about 5-10 days out of the year or something like
Correct.
that.
Yeah, typically 7 days a year is what that will get you.
So I would have to pay maybe 5 grand to dump it and then get the 20 grand back, or maybe
No,
a little bit more.
there will be no getting the 20 grand back. And that's the hard pill to swallow, is that this is not an investment that has any return other than in memories. So if you used it, had some good times, great. But whether or not you use it, you're paying for it forever. And there is no one on the other side that's going to pay for this deed at this point.
Okay, so what if I want to buy one of these things? How much could I buy one of those for?
There are thousands of timeshares online for free.
Is that available on your guys' website, or how would I get the
Oh,
list?
yeah, this has actually never really come up in this kind of a setting. We don't advertise it in that way. We do actually use like a shared Google sheet that will list all of the available ones on. So I guess the thing would be if someone had interest that was listening to this, or I can certainly send you access to that. And we have seen over the last few years some nice portfolios be sold or taken over by larger vacation rental companies. And if you want to work it, you can do well. You can make 10-20% above the maintenance fees on these ownerships, and sometimes much more. It's just a matter of a lot of timeshare owners don't want to become an expert on vacation rental to deal with their 1 week a year. Now, if you're doing like we do, where you have a whole bunch of them and you're making a business out of it, yeah, of course you can do well. And we are happy to give them away if there's interest. Our business model is to get paid for getting someone out of it. We
Right,
don't
there's
worry
no
about trying to make
cost.
money reselling them.
If I wanted to stock something here in Hawaii, just use an example like that somebody had previously paid 20 grand for, maybe paying 5 grand a year, how much would I have to pay to acquire something like that for
You
myself?
wouldn't
Oh, for free.
is actually paying rather than the buyer in these transactions. And that's what can be a little confusing. It's so unusual, right? There's not many things where you pay to sell it. And,
Makes
in
me like not
essence,
want to makes me not want to have it now. It's like a
yeah.
monkey on your shoulder that you get for free, and now you have that monkey.
There are certain ones that can be a good value, and if you're going to use them, great. We get a lot of Hawaii inventory. It's a specific week and a specific unit. If you're going to go and use it, to pay $800, $1,000 for a week in a condo on the beach in Hawaii is amazing. It's just that these folks might live in Nebraska and aren't wanting to fly far because of COVID now, and they're looking at, hey, we didn't go the last couple years anyway, and we paid. Let's just dump the thing.
Yeah, I'll definitely get on that list, and I'll be stalking it a little bit,
Okay.
because I'm like one of those people that I need that motivation to actually spend money. If not, I just keep it in my bank. So might be good for folks like myself or their listeners.
Sure, to make a commitment to doing something with your loved ones at a specific, time of year that you can plan around. If that's something that is of interest, we're happy to give you any of the ownerships that our clients are trying to unload.
Anything else that you think listeners would be interested, or you get very commonly asked on this topic that you think we miss?
Probably the biggest thing that I always want to communicate is to be very careful. Unfortunately, the timeshare industry is not very regulated, especially on the exit side of the industry, getting people out. There are almost no regulations. And so there are a lot of scams, any kind of situation where you're bringing money to a transaction, having to pay up front. If it's not a legitimate title company, just stay away from it. There are unfortunately a lot of, bad players in this space. And I would just caution anyone to do a little background research, look someone up on BBB, make sure they don't have attorney general complaints, because there's very few out there that don't.
Yeah. Anybody can get on BBB. I'm on there. I have an A+ rating, but just
I'm
joking.
sure.
But yeah, if you guys want to reach out to Alexandria, you can go to giveupmytimeshare.com com.
Yes.
Any other, that's probably the best way to get a hold of you guys.
That's the best way, or a quick Google search, Alexandra Timeshare. I'll pop up. Watch our webinar. That will give you a lot of background information. Feel free to reach out if you are wanting to have access to what properties are we unloading right now. We can definitely hook you up if you want to step in as a buyer, or if you have one that you want to get out of, then definitely start with watching the webinar and reaching out. I'd love to chat with you about it.
Yeah, guys. So, hey, no shame if you bought a timeshare. We all make mistakes in the past. Luckily, you can unload this monkey off your shoulder to somebody else via this means. If you guys have any friends or family members that need this information, feel free to pass this along. Little hint, hint, hint there for you. But hey, if you get rid of that $5,000 a year payment, right? That's a rental property in 4 years, or if it's another syndication deal. I think once you realize that there's this alternative investing world out there, you start to look around the house in the coins and the couches, money all around. You start to look to really deploy that money, and you got a lot of dead lazy equity or cash flow going out the door in one of these timeshares. And you do the math, right? If you're investing, making 10-20% returns on your money with a tax advantage basis, who cares about a $500 hotel timeshare that you get access to 5 times a year? You could probably go like baller status in the Maldives for $1,000 a night, right? With the cash that you have, and cash is king. Cash gives you freedom. Timeshares, you're just stuck in that arrangement. But thanks for listening, guys. Make sure you join the Investor Club, SimplePassiveCashflow.com/club. All right, we're back, guys. Now it's time for a little real talk with Alexandria as my personal questions here, which I use my podcast to ask my selfishly questions. All right, so if I'm thinking about buying like Aulani, just use that as an example, which is the Disney resort here in Kawaoka. I got to pay the annual maintenance fees, which is like about $5,000 a year for something like that one.
Oh no, probably about 1,200.
1,200. Oh, wow. So pay 1,200, and that gives me access to the property for how many nights a year, you think?
It will depend on the time of year, what week it is, what size unit, but around $1,000 to $1,200 for a week, pretty much anywhere in the world.
Okay. And of course, I live here in Hawaii, so it's the same season every freaking day out of the year. And I live here, so that would be ideal. Yeah. So maybe I'm just trying to get a price per day in my head. So is that 5 days?
I find with doing the vacation rentals, we end up averaging around 80 to 100 a night for what our cost is to make a reservation.
Okay. But this Aulani thing is really to stay there is like $600, which I think is a complete ripoff. I'd never do that. But that's what they charge. So that $1,200
basis for they can charge $50,000 up front for a week at a place like Aulani, because then it's all about over the next 7 to 10 years you're going to break even on, because you're only paying $1,000 a year. And
so you're saying if I pay like my maintenance fee of a couple grand for that one, maybe I'd be able to stay there for 5 nights or something like that. So an average night of $200.
Yes, it would be unusual in timeshare to ever even average paying $200 a night for somewhere.
Okay, that I can do, because I have to take these quarterly breakout to do like personal goals and stuff like that and family stuff. This would actually work to that.
Yeah, and if you know when you're going to be doing those breaks, for the planner, for someone who's organized, plans ahead and schedules and is fine planning a year out, 2 years out, timeshare is going to work very well for. That's just not how people plan travel typically anymore. And that's where there's been this imbalance where about 80% of timeshare owners want out of their ownership.
Yeah, and for you guys listening, this is where it's important to like the imbalance, right? So many people in California, Hawaii, Seattle, New York, they all think to buy their house. This is why I say do the complete opposite, because the imbalance. There's so many desperate landlords out there that would love to rent their house for $2,000 to $3,000 to somebody like you guys. That's where you guys make money on the delta, just like in this circumstance. Cool. I'm gonna try this out and maybe update you guys on a future show.
This website offers very general information concerning real estate for investment purposes. Every investor situation is unique. Always seek the services of licensed third-party appraisers and inspectors to verify the value and condition of any property you intend to purchase. Use the services of professional title and escrow companies and licensed tax, investment, and or legal advisor before relying on any information contained herein. Information is not guaranteed, as in every investment there is risk. The content found here is just my opinion, and things change, and I reserve the right to change my mind. Above all else, do your own analysis and think for yourself, because in the end, you are the only person who is going to look out for your best interests.